what year was that?
1973.
1973. Okay.
Towards the end, yeah.
Towards the
Yes.
end.
This
So,
is December
and-
1st, 2nd, 1973.
and the reason why I bring that up. So, how long were you two dating before he proposed to you?
I don't remember exactly how long. It wasn't very long.
If it was, I started dating her seriously in the middle of September or October. It was only like 2.5
It wasn't
months, a little over 2 months.
Yeah.
So, we're talking from that time, September, October, 1973, and then you got married in March of 1974.
Correct.
I want to give you the little story about them. He did propose after he took me home. So it was actually December 2nd that he proposed. And I accepted. And remember, I was living in an apartment at my aunt's house. Well, my aunt had loved to go camping, and she had a little Scotty trailer, and it was a warm night in Florida, and she couldn't sleep, so she was outside in her camper. And when he proposed, she heard the whole thing.
But pulled in right next to the camper,
Yeah.
right where her bedroom was in
Yeah.
the camper with her window open, and our windows were rolled down.
And the next morning, there was a dozen roses delivered to me.
Yeah.
And she sat in her chair and she goes, "Barbie, you want to tell me something?"
Yeah.
I go, "Oh yeah." So that was
Okay, so I had you talk about all that because we're still on the whole issue of 1975.
Yeah.
Okay, and so how heavily? And I'm going to start with you, Mom, on this one. How heavily do you think that the date of 1975 influenced your decision to get married?
Well, we're in dire anticipation of Armageddon, of course. And yes, I didn't want to go through this alone, to tell you the truth. I wanted somebody to go through with me. And he came along, and I thought, he's as good as any. So.
So there were others?
No.
I'm just joking.
No. So, yeah. I kind of liked him too.
Yeah,
It wasn't just.
And I'm going to ask the same question to you, Dad. You know, how heavily do you think 1975 influenced?
Big time. I wanted to get married. I wanted to be married before 75. And I found a gal that agreed to it. And we got married. And, and that year was a turbulent year. The year we got married was Watergate was taking place. Nixon resigned. There was, a lot of things taking place in the world.
And so I'm sure with all those things taking place, when the Watchtower says, hey, 1975's it,
Yeah.
when you see all these things happening, you're like, oh my goodness, these are all the signs. This is all really coming to a head,
Yeah.
isn't it? So it was just
Yeah.
like,
Oh, yeah.
in your minds, it was probably making it more and more urgent that you get there.
Yeah.
And he wanted to get married really soon, and I was kind of trying to put him off a little bit, not. But we were actually married. I'll give you the date: March 23rd, 1974. So, and we were married, of course, in the Kingdom Hall. So.
And just for purposes, how many years have you been married now this year?
Well, this coming year will be in March of 2021. We'll be married 47
years.
So,
47.
Yeah.
as of the recording of this, though, this is now December of 2020, and it's Christmas Eve. So you've been married 46 years,
Yes.
and you two went through the organization for many years together, and eventually came out. And I'm only saying that just to give our listeners kind of a perspective of how long you two have also been in it together as well.
And to add to that, we officially left the organization. I always say January, but we went to the memorial with you in April of 2011. So really, whether you say January or April, we've been officially out for 10 years.
Well, we'll get to that later. That we're working our way up to that.
Oh, okay.
So
Sorry.
no, that's fine. But So now, back to 1975. Now let's talk about a little bit. 1975 came. 1975 went.
Yeah.
Obviously, we're talking here in 2020, and Armageddon still hasn't come. So, what was it like in those months, those a couple years after 1975 passed? And tell our listeners about what the organization did. Folks, this is coming from people that actually lived through this. So when the organization tries to tell you one thing, these people actually lived through it. Let's hear what they have to say.
Well, your mom and I were having our doubts. Hey, it came and went, and So we said, well, we know who to go talk to. My parents, especially my dad. He was an elder, and you knew your grandpa, how strong he was in the faith, to the point of, dictatorship as far as it goes. Well, we went to them, and we go, Dad, what's going on? The society said 75. It didn't happen because this was 76 now, around that time. And, and they were saying this and that. Did they lie to us? And, oh, boy, did he get angry with us. He started saying how we were acting like, he don't think he used the word apostates, but he might as well had. And he says, don't you believe in the truth? And, don't you believe in Jehovah? And he was livid. And we finally just said, no, we're just wondering. We're not, we backed down quite a bit on that.
Yeah, we were kids.
Well, yeah.
And so, that kept us in the organization for quite a while because of that incident.
Well, I don't know whether it was in the literature or whether it was a conjecture on certain elders' parts. But there was what was going around at that time was that, well, it's been 6,000 years from the creation of Adam to 1975. But we don't know how long it was from the time Adam was created to the time Eve was created. That could have been another 10, 20, 30 years maybe that Adam was alone. And so maybe Armageddon isn't going to come until Eve was created. Now, that kind of bought another 20 years, more or less.
And on top of that, they also blamed us, the publishers, for being over enthusiastic about something they said, but they kind of denied that they said it, but yet it's there in the literature. And then I think finally around 1980 or 81, somewhere around there, they finally apologized that, what they said.
And I know I've heard the audio clips of a circuit overseer that was given a talk prior to 1975, and I'm going to go ahead and show the little clip of it right here.
Well, now, as Jehovah's Witnesses, as runners, even though some of us have become a little weary, it almost seems as though Jehovah has provided meat in due season, because he's held up before all of us a new goal, a new year, something to reach out for, and it just seems it's given all of us so much more energy and power in this final burst of speed for the finish line. And that's the year 1975.
But in that video clip, he said, to stay alive to 75. So it was, and that was a motto coming down from the top of the organization. So with just that alone being announced at a district convention, how the hell could they blame the publisher? Now, we know how they can. We don't need to really get into that because of the way the organization is. But that's just the way they do things. And so and we just can't. It's hard to wrap your head around, especially if you never were part of it.
I kind of think of when on this one Exjw site I was on for quite a while, that there was always people would be like that. Well, how could they have done that? And he goes, let's review this. And he write, it's a cult.
Yeah.
And that's exactly.
Well,
Well,
exactly, but and that's what they do though.
Yeah.
They'll tell you one thing. They'll tell you, "Hey, Armageddon's coming in 1975." 75 comes, 75 comes and goes, and then, well, now it's your fault because you were, like the old saying, you were getting ahead of Jehovah's chariot. That's one they like to use. And yeah.
Well, and another thing too is you're in this organization. You're only supposed to have friends in the organization.
Mm-hmm.
When I came in, I basically cut off my other family to be part of this family. Now I still had contact with them, but it wasn't like a family.
Mm-hmm.
So now I'm invested in this. Okay, I've invested my life into this. I'm married now. 1977, my first child was born. Okay, 1982, my second child was born. Wonder who that was.
I heard he's a really handsome guy.
He is pretty smart too. He has his own YouTube channel.
Tell them what the sister said to you when they found out you were pregnant with
When
Tim.
I was pregnant with Tim, the sister said, they looked at me like, pregnant? Whoa. And there's a scripture, woe to the pregnant woman in the last days.
Yeah.
And that's what I heard.
So nice.
Yeah, how
I know.
nice. Well, what do I got to do? Have
Love
an
never
abortion?
fails. What can I say?
Yeah. So, and so you're so invested in it that even if the prophecies don't happen, like they say, you still turn it around in your mind, contort it somehow to make it fit so that you can tell yourself that it's okay to be in this organization.
And that's what they call the sunk cost fallacy, because you've invested so much time.
Mm-hmm.
It could be time, it could be money, that if it's not true, well, it can't be not true because I've invested all this time and energy into it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the big things this organization gets people into, is that investment of their time and their lives, and that's how they keep them hooked in.